everybody. Welcome and thank you very much for coming. We are excited to be here tonight. We are presenting the results of our survey that we did in September. I would like to begin tonight by reading a number from the writings, and this reflects the spirit in which we conducted our survey. So, it's from Secrets of Heaven, 1799. If people would make love to the Lord and charity toward the neighbor the principle of faith, doctrinal matters would then be only varieties of opinion. Truly Christian people would leave everyone to his or her own conscience and would say in their hearts that a person is truly a Christian when she or he lives as the Lord teaches. Thus, from all the differing churches, there would be made one church. And all the dissensions that come forth from doctrine alone would vanish. Yea, all hatreds of one against another would be dissipated in a moment, and the Lord's kingdom would come on the earth. So if we could reflect on that for just a moment, and then if you would please join me in the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in the heavens, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, as in heaven, so upon the earth. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we also forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. All right, now we would like to present our survey results. There will be a time for questions afterwards. So if things come up in your head while we're going through, try to remember them. However, if you need clarification about a particular slide or can't see a number, go ahead and raise your hand and I'll try and help you with that. As of tonight, these results are now public. We'll be putting them somehow online in some format, so you can share them with people who aren't here, and go ahead and share them with people who aren't here tonight. The one thing we ask is that when you are telling people about the results, you're careful to tell them that the numbers can only reflect the people who answered our survey, and they can't be applied to Bernathen in general or the general church as a whole. If 37% of people of Bernathen say this, it has to be 37% of the people who took our survey say this. So, all right. So, Women's Ordination Survey Results by Advocates for Women's Ordination, presented November 30th, 2013. History of the Advocates for Women's Ordination. AWO began at the Appreciative Inquiry Summit in August of 2012, when participants were asked to form groups around common goals. Tira Keel and Jessica Baker, sorry I forgot to introduce myself, that's me, volunteered to lead the group. Over time, the group has grown to include 7 core members and around 60 Facebook followers. Survey methodology. The text of the AWO survey was written and refined over the course of a year, beginning in August 2012. So we worked on it for a long time, and we met with people along the way and had first drafts. We met a couple times with some of the pastors in Bernathen and received valuable feedback, and we always were very open and transparent about what we were doing and why. Now, the survey was programmed into SurveyMonkey.com and open for 1 month during September of 2013. A variety of sampling methods were attempted in order to reach the widest possible array of members and friends in order to secure a better representative sample. We advertised it on Facebook, we emailed people, we had ads in the Post, we had paper copies available upon request, we had paper copies up at Cairnwood Village, we had flyers around town, we had business cards we distributed, so hopefully everyone heard about the survey and had an opportunity to answer it. And we are happy with the response rate. So the first part of the survey asked whether or not people were willing to take it, and if not, why not. So if you look under number of respondents, you can see the total was 990 people responding. Of those, 22 were not willing to take the survey, 967 were willing, and 1 person chose not to answer. And 53.3% of the total willing sample, 528 respondents, entered Bernathen area zip codes. Now the demographic information was optional, but we were glad to see a large portion of respondents being from the Bernathen area. Now those who chose not to answer the survey, we had a chance for them to share if they wanted to tell us why not. And the main themes that came up when people answered was they feel the survey is biased, they don't feel this topic should be surveyed, they don't feel their anonymity will be adequately protected, they don't know enough about this issue to answer, or they have no interest, no opinion on this issue. Oh, and just, can we go back for a sec? So we had 528 people enter Bernathen zips. Just for reference sake, there are about 2,900 people included in the Bernathen area members and friends number, not including children under 14. All right, so this is the information people have been wondering about. This was the first statement on our survey, and the statement was, I am in favor of the ordination of women in the general church. And people had 5 options. They could strongly disagree, disagree, not sure, agree, or strongly agree. And if you look at the bottom table, just for simplicity's sake, so you're not staring at so many numbers tonight, we combined strongly disagree and disagree into any disagree, and we combined agree and strongly agree into any agree. The other thing to point out about these tables is the top row is total sample, and the second row is Bernathen area excluding non-members. So there were, I believe, 8 people who entered Bernathen area zips, but in the open-ended section it became clear they were not members of the Bernathen church. They were convention or they lived in the area but didn't consider themselves members. So we took those out for this part, but they are included in the total sample. And when you look at the bottom table, total sample compared to the Bernathen area, when you look at the percentage points, you'll see the total sample is very close to the Bernathen respondents, less than a percentage point difference. So for the sake of simplicity, so we're not throwing so many numbers at you tonight, we are going to present the total sample numbers. We have the Bernathen sample numbers available, should anyone want to see those for any question. But because there wasn't very much difference, we went with the total sample. And for those who are more visually inclined to take in information, this is the same statement, and it's a pie chart. And this pie chart reflects the 5 choices. Strongly disagree, disagree, not sure, agree, and strongly agree. The largest portion of respondents selected strongly agree, 42.1%, 18.9% agreed, 15.5% were not sure, 7.9% disagreed, and 15.6% strongly disagreed with the ordination of women in the general church. We also broke down the first statement, being in favor of the ordination of women in the general church, by gender, to see if there was a difference between men's answers and women's answers. And it turns out there was a slight difference. If you look at the men, they were slightly more likely to disagree with the ordination of women. For 24.6% disagreed, opposed to 21.6% of women answering the survey disagreed. And the other thing to note is the numbers in brackets after men and women shows how many men and women responded. So you can see we had about twice as many women answer our survey as men. Same question, this time we broke it down by age. So the first bar graph is under age 30, the second bar is 31 to 60, and the third bar is 61 plus. And it's not surprising that the support for the ordination of women in the general church goes down slightly as age goes up. So we did find a correlation there. It's interesting to point out, though, that at each age bracket, there are more people in support of the ordination of women than against it. And we have more details available on this. Like, we can break it down by more specific age groups, but again, just so you're not seeing so many numbers all at once, we chose the 3. And we did get a good chunk of respondents from each age group, 382 people under age 30, 297 in the middle group, and 154. And not everyone put in their age. The demographic information was optional.
Is that under 30s begin at 18?
No, it's just under 30.
Okay.
Because I believe some high schoolers
Okay, that's what I was
took the survey as well. All right. The next statement on our survey that people could respond to: I think that women are capable of feeling an authentic internal call to ministry, and it seems that the majority of people do agree that women can feel called to the ministry. This slide combines 3 of our questions from the survey. We asked people's opinion on women clergy being capable of effectively serving as religion teachers, preachers, and pastors. We purposely didn't define those terms. We let people put their own spin on how they wanted to define them. Although preachers to us meant someone who's in the pulpit giving a sermon, pastoring more in charge of the society and ministering to their needs, and then religion teacher being in the classroom. You'll notice that there were more people that agreed with women serving as religion teachers, and it became clear in the comment section that a lot of people agreed that they could teach religion, but only up until a certain age. So if we could redo the survey, we'd probably clarify that when we're talking about teaching religion, we would mean any age. So I think that number is a little higher because of that reason. The thing that's somewhat interesting is there isn't a big difference between preachers and pastors in terms of how many people agree that women could effectively serve in those roles. All right. This slide also combines 2 questions. Our statement was, I think that I will be more active in this church / donate more if women are ordained. And we got some feedback on the survey that this question, people didn't necessarily like us asking this question, and in hindsight, the question didn't really answer what we were looking for various reasons. Perhaps a different format of question would allow people to say they would give less, or they would give more, or they would give the same. But the strongly disagree, not sure was confusing. And the reason we put this in is people have voiced this as a concern. What would be the financial impact on the church if the general church began to ordain women? So that's what we were trying to gauge, and that's the information we got, and perhaps a better worded question would have gotten more accurate information. All right. The next statement: I think people who support a gender-inclusive clergy should start or join a different branch of the church. So you can see from this diagram that the majority of people responding to our survey disagreed with this statement. And when we look at the breakdown of people who agree with ordination and disagree with ordination, they were responding in all these categories. There are people who are for the ordination, who agree with this and disagree with this. So that's a more detailed breakdown that's useful, and if anyone wants to ask for that information in the question and answer session, we have that as well. All right. This slide also combines 2 questions. We asked on the survey if people themselves had been negatively impacted by the fact that the organization does not ordain women, and we asked if they knew a relative or a close friend who had been negatively impacted. And so we combined the information, And the largest group, 40.4% of people responding to the survey, said neither myself nor a friend relation are negatively impacted. The second largest group said that they themselves and a friend or relative were negatively impacted. And the third group said they themselves were not negatively impacted, but they had a friend or relative who was. And the smallest group, 3.2% of people answering the question, said just themselves. They didn't know a friend or a relative who were negatively impacted. So it's kind of an isolating feeling if you're the only one you know who's negatively impacted. The next statement was asking, or was letting people share how they form their opinions. So I form my opinions on the ordination of women based on the following. And we had those 6 choices along the left-hand side, and you could select any that applied to you. And the choice that was most selected was my life experience. 77.6% of people felt that was a factor in their opinion. My intuition was next at 57.9%. The writings were 52.6%. The Old and New Testaments, 29%. What general church authorities teach, 22.5%. And then the one that was selected the least was cultural trends, 22%. And 13.1% of people answering this question wrote in another factor. And we read through all those comments, and we selected the top ones and pulled out the themes, kind of. And the top other comments were a moral preference for equality, inclusiveness, and you can see in brackets how many people had some form of that as their comment. What my friends say, lay people or clergy, some version of God, the Lord, the writings, or the word, a sense that discrimination, sexism is unfair and wrong, reason or common sense, and personal comfort, beliefs, bias. And now we're starting to transition into the part of the survey that was open-ended, and there was a lot of reading to do. We had over 70 pages. There were like 1,492 comments that people wrote in answer to this and the other questions. So it was a lot of reading, and we did our best to pull out themes, what was said the most often. And we're going to be presenting the top 5 themes from each question. We were going for top 5 here as well, but you can see the bottom 3, it was a tie. So if it's a tie at the bottom, we will include that in our themes. So I define priesthood as, and the most common things people were writing about, a teacher or instructor on spiritual matters, teaching, instructing, sharing information on religion. A leader or pastor, head of society, someone who engages in leading or pastoring. Someone who dedicates their life to studying and or protecting scripture or doctrine. Someone who leads others to the Lord, to heaven, or to a good life. And a counselor, provider of comfort, someone who cares for others' spiritual needs. And this is from people of all viewpoints contributing to these themes. The next open-ended question we asked was, if the general church starts to train and ordain women, I plan to. And the 5 main themes we picked out of people's responses: support the change, be supportive, express joy, celebration, congratulations, or feel positive emotions. Nothing, remain in the church and do the same as normal. Participate more, or leave, quit, resign, or split. The next question, or the next open-ended statement, these are the changes I think are needed in the structure and culture of the general church in order for women to be ordained. Now, the top theme we picked out reading through the responses are a need to increase openness, open-mindedness, welcoming, and embracing change. The second main theme we picked out of the answers were that no changes were necessary and they do not support the ordination of women. and some people feeling like, that's a trick question. I can't answer that if I don't support. And in retrospect, we're like, oh yeah, we probably could have worded that in a way that made those people feel like they didn't have to respond. Needing cultural change was the third theme, and need to revise male-dominated structures. Hierarchy, patriarchy, paternalism, rigid vertical structure, those were some of the terms people were using when they were describing the change they felt would be needed. And the fifth theme we picked out was that women should be allowed to preach, teach, minister, lead, just add them. So sort of like the second one, no change is necessary, just go ahead and add women in. Now, also want to add, that was by far the most reading to do. We talked to people who had typed Word documents and pasted them in, and we even had people send papers in. Like, there was a lot of response to this. And we have so many more themes that we pulled out. We're going with, I guess in this case, the top 6, because it's a 3-way tie at the bottom. We have all the themes we picked out available if someone wants to ask about some more of the themes. But these were the top ones. The top, or actually it's a tie at the top, people who liked the survey and were thanking us for the survey. And the next was people criticizing the survey and saying we shouldn't have done the survey. So that balanced out nicely. The third theme, or the third most mentioned comment, was there's too much male-dominated structure, and the same words, hierarchy, patriarchy, paternalism, coming out in people's comments. The fourth theme was that women can or should be allowed to do this. The fourth theme, and a lot of people wrote eloquently on this, is wanting balance. Men and women or husband-wife serving together. And then women need to be included. And then tied with that is women can't or shouldn't do this. So again, it all balanced out in the comments. But we had a lot to read. There's a lot more. So I don't know how we'll share that information, but it was a lot of reading. And that, in some ways, was the most valuable part of the survey, is people getting a chance to share their opinions. And that's what the survey was about, is giving people a chance to have their say. All right, so we're gonna have just a little break, shift things up. We're going to bring the members of our AWO group, at least 5 of them, up here on stage so that you can ask them questions and ask for more detail. And we'll do that for a while. But in the meantime, if you want to get up and move around a little bit, we'll dim the lights or I'll clap my hands when it's time to start the panel discussion. So thank you so much for being such a great audience. All right, so I want to introduce my panel to you. All right. I'll introduce Tira first. This is Tira Keel. She provides the vision and leadership, and it was her idea to do a survey, and she was the one at the Appreciative Inquiry Summit who had the courage to stand up and say, hey, I want to investigate this particular issue. So without her, none of us would be here, and none of this information would be available. So very happy to have Tira on our team. Harris Campbell has been such a stalwart, dedicated member of our group. He's brought a strong sense of fairness, justice. He's always pushed for transparency, and he's also brought a masculine perspective. So we much appreciate that. Thank you, Harris. And next member on our discussion panel is Roz Taylor, and she has a great personal commitment to the use of female ministers. She's in the process of becoming ordained, and her sensitivity and thoughtfulness towards others and her doctrinal training really helped shape the survey as we were developing it. So thank you, Roz. Julie has an amazing work ethic. She is so committed. She's got scientific training, she's got doctoral training, and she's always, always willing to do what it takes to get things done. And she's been a real asset to our team. Thank you, Julie. And then there's Liz. And here I am taking all the glory, but all the work tonight was done by Liz. She is our in-house expert. She has done this for a living, creating surveys, compiling results, coding data, creating presentations, checking for cheaters with IP address. She's done a lot of the work to make this survey as good as it is. And we really, I don't know if we could have done it without her. So thank you so much, Liz.
All right. And because you're not going to introduce yourself the same way, I just want to say, this wouldn't have happened without you, Jess. I had this idea, this crazy idea, and Jess jumped in, and we wouldn't have had a single meeting if you hadn't scheduled them and hosted them and reminded everyone they were coming up. So thank you, Jess.
It was great. We made a really good team. And now they're going to answer your questions. So does anyone have a question? There's a microphone that'll be passed around, and I'm going to turn myself off now.
Hi, I'm Andy. Thanks for doing this survey. One of the things that struck me was that a lot less people expressed feeling personally negatively impacted by the male-only clergy policy than expressed a desire or an agreement with the idea of an inclusive clergy. And I just thought that was interesting, and to me it suggests that the critique that people who want women ministries are coming from a sense of personal hurt rather than a more reasoned consideration of the doctrines. It seems like that seems to suggest that it's not coming from just a personal sense of grievance.
Yeah, I think that's a really amazing point, because I first saw that and I was like, really? That few people feel this personally? But it's true that I've come up personally against plenty of people going, oh, well, you're just wounded. And it's not always the comment that's made, but clearly there are plenty of people that don't have any injury about this, but still would like to see women join the clergy.
And I don't say that to say that feeling injured isn't a good reason to have that opinion either.
Absolutely.
I agree with that. I think more to the point is, if you are wounded, is it a good idea to be able to get help for what has, hurt you, or is it a good idea for everybody to sort of like blame you for it? So that's my opinion.
Yeah, I think some of us.
Don't turn it on.
Don't turn it off. Yes. What some of us have felt hurt initially, feeling that having done the research and looked at all the evidence and said the emperor has no clothes, that the general church continued to do that. That was very, very hurtful. But rather than dwell on that, I found that if I kept stepping forward, not knowing quite where I was going, that was the way that I could deal with that.
Any other questions? Comments?
I thought it was unfortunate that there was no question on the questionnaire that I saw that asked whether one was a member of the general church or of the, subscriber to the proposition that their writings are the Word of God, and how long, they've been going to church and so forth. Some indication of commitment and involvement over the years, as opposed to just somebody that might go to the thrift shop now and then.
Okay, yeah, we did test that question out, and what we found is actually a surprising number of people don't know if they are an official member of the new church, or if, where they were supposed to sign on the line, or if are you if you got confirmed? Are you if you had your wedding there? Like there's apparently sort of a knowledge gap. Additionally, we found people had concerns about their anonymity, because if we asked, what is your affiliation? Which I think was a question I proposed, because often you would have like a qualifier to keep it just people you want taking the survey. And what happened was people were like, well, I don't want to say if I'm a student or if I'm an employee. They were afraid it would compromise their anonymity. So, and as far as wanting a sample that included like disgruntled people and disenfranchised people and that kind of thing, we actually wanted that. We wanted to find out, from everyone who felt that they would identify themselves as a member or friend, which is how we always advertised it, everyone who came in. We did have 8 people who took the survey and confessed to us in the open ends that, they weren't sure if they should be counted. But everyone else did not say that.
And I think also to answer your question, this came out of the AI process, and the parameters for all of the groups that were in the AI process was it was inclusive of members and friends of the Bernathen community. So that would include people who like to come to EACT productions or something like that, but have no actual affiliation with the religion. And we were operating under that umbrella.
And I don't think I only speak for myself, because we talked about this at our meetings, the fact that as a group we didn't have access to, maybe we could have if we'd really begged for it, but we didn't really have any way of making sure we only got it to members or to a specific sort of group in that respect. And knowing that there are people that come to church on a regular basis and aren't signed up as members of Bernathen, as a member of the Bernathen church. Maybe they're a general church member, but this was geared toward Bernathen, so it was hard to know which group to ask for. And we would be thrilled if the Bernathen church or the general church, as that organization, decided to do a survey themselves. And then they could decide what parameters they wanted to, but we didn't feel like it would work unless they were doing that.
I think I noticed in the numbers that the number of people who believed in an authentic internal call towards the ministry was higher than the number of people who thought that women should be ministers, which implies that there's a good number of people out there who took the survey that believe that women have an authentic internal call but should not become ministers. And I'm wondering if there's anything in the comments that addressed what these people thought of that issue. What is a woman supposed to do if she has this authentic call? That's how it was phrased, authentic internal call. What are they supposed to do with that authentic call if not try to pursue ministry? Are they supposed to go be, were they supposed to go be ministers somewhere else? Should they leave? Should they just ignore their call? Was there anything in the comments that addressed that?
I did not. Did you? Okay, one thing I can say is that cross-tabulation could be made. I don't have it tonight.
That's interesting. I'd be very interested to see that. I noticed the same thing, and what I saw in the open-ended comments was, I think it was in the, mostly people added it in that I'd also like to add. There were only maybe 2 or 3 people that went into detail about, well, this is what women could do. And they proceeded to list off a whole bunch of things that women already do. Teach and be classroom teachers and do the Stephen ministry thing and simply be really good friends to their loved ones and they went into more detail, but it was and then they proceeded to say, oh, and they're mostly doing these already. So there definitely seems to be, we could go back and ask that more specifically. What does it say? Oh, to the ministry. We did say to the ministry, but there seemed to be, because we said ministry, it seemed to people, the few people that made comments on it in the open-ended seemed to be saying well, define ministry, and they can have a ministry of this or a ministry of that, but they can't be on the pulpit and they can't be teaching religion, etc.
One here and one here.
Thank you. One of the numbers displayed up there during the presentation that I found most exciting and quite important was that there was not a very significant difference between the views of women and men. That I felt was profoundly important. So it isn't apparently just, oh, it's a women's thing or something like that. It has depth and a lot of other things, and I was delighted to see that it's not just a woman's thing. I think that's, to me, probably the most important thing in all this. One question I would have of you is, with 1/3, 37%, I think you said, something like that, of the population responded. Would any of you be willing to speculate about the 2/3 that didn't on the on the issue of whether it would be a legitimate conjecture that the near similarity between men's and women's views on this probably reasonably would apply to those 2 out of 3 who didn't answer as well. In fact, I can think of a reason why it would not, the 2 out of 3 who did not vote probably were even less feminine dominated. I can see an argument, but I realize that you put on a very valuable survey on actual views, and if you don't want to speculate about those who didn't survey, I can well understand. But
Yeah,
if anybody does have that, it would be interesting to me.
We aren't making inferences, and the reason why we aren't making statistical inferences is because this is not technically a random sample, because a random sample would have required us to turn away people. Like, we would have had to get, assuming we could have gotten some mailing list from either the general church or the Bernathen church, which I think is not something they necessarily would have given us, and then just picked off the members and sampled them randomly, then we could make inferences and say, we believe this captures, the real values of the Bernathen community are between this number and this number. And the reason we can't do that now is because all of significance testing and, all of those statistical tests, confidence intervals, anything you can think of like that, is usually based on the principle of random sampling. So if you don't do random sampling, you usually wouldn't do inferential statistics. You would do descriptive statistics, which is what we've done here, which tells you, these are the questions we asked, these are how we ask people, this is what the result was. But we can't say anything at all about why people didn't choose to take the survey. I don't think it would be appropriate for us to say, oh, they're less, dominated by one gender or another. If I just had to guess, I would probably say there are certain topics that men think really don't apply to them, that aren't their issues, so that, probably no interest or no applicability would be the most common reason why people don't take surveys, is they don't really, have anything to say on them. Yeah, this is a slide I made for, oh yeah, and Harris can weigh in too, for if you didn't like anything about these results or the methodology. The great thing about academic research is that no one result is ever the last word. Scientific consensus is achieved through a process of many researchers studying and reporting on the same issue and building on each other's research. So if you would like to contest the results, please do form a group, make your own survey, or choose another alternate kind of methodology. You know, that would be just great. We would encourage that and think that was fine. And
yeah, I was kind of responding to the similar, fairly similar numbers between men and women. To me, there are two parts of the issue, two main parts. One is for women who happen to want to serve and providing them the opportunity to do that. None of us are led and taught directly by the minister. We're only led and taught immediately and directly by the Lord through the Word. And if you have three different male ministers, they're going to present through their loves three different views of what the Word is teaching. But the actual teaching and leading is done by the Lord. And so one section is the women who want to have that opportunity to serve. And the other part is, for me, and it was brought up a number of times in the open-ended questions, is balance. And throughout the writing, Swedenborg brings together how the heart and the lungs function together, and how truth without good is not real truth, it's apparent truth. And I know there are some of us who feel that that's something that may be missing in the general church, is combining the love and the wisdom, which comes down as one from God, and sending it. You know, we split it up here in the world. We learn how to do it. That's part of the process that we go through. And afterwards we try to get out of the way. We try to push that out of the way and bring it back together. But in terms of leading congregations, presenting somebody's love of the Word to somebody else, there are a lot of different ways to do that, and different people may respond to it, but the teaching and leading is always done by the Lord.
Thank you. This is a heck of a job you people have done, and I hope that something will become available in writing to the community.
Yes, in terms of the survey results?
Because there's so much analysis on every one of those shots you put up on the screen. There are a lot of things to look at and think about, and it would be a big asset if we could see them on our own time. Work at it. Thanks.
This is directed to Rosalind and Julie. I'm wondering if either of you ladies would be willing to briefly, because you are already a pastor and becoming one, I would be interested if you would be willing to give us a brief description of what led you to this and what the process has been and how it's been received.
I was in the Mars program at the end of 2003, and I loved it. I'd ostensibly done it just to get a feel of what it was like to be in a new church school, because I didn't attend one. I also started visiting ALS patients, and I realized as I went through my microbiology career that my work with ALS patients and my work in the theological school was way more important to me, but it took several years before I was finally fired from my microbiology job, which was a relief, to give me the ability to be able to follow what I loved. And in the meantime, I did a search. I pulled up thousands of passages from the writings, thousands literally. I've written several papers. critiquing papers that keep women out. And over the years, I've had the opportunity to become a volunteer at Abington Hospital. In hospice and pastoral care, I received chaplaincy training. My degree in the Mars program helped me get into the chaplaincy program. I became an interfaith minister last December. One of the most amazing experiences to see how the Lord leads people through all the different faiths. As a hospice chaplain, now for 3.5 years, nobody has ever criticized that I'm a woman. I am able to bring to people, many of my patients are Catholic, I'm able to support them in their Catholic faith, and nobody, well, one lady said, "You're not Catholic, are you?" No, I'm not, but I am Christian. What are you? Swedenborgian. What's that? Well, see this Bible that I've read to you? That's our basis. And we also use the writings of Swedenborg to explain the paradoxes. Oh, she said. And that was all it took. But basically, in the real world, I shouldn't say in the real world, should I? In the world outside the general church, most religions are now accepting women, and we bring something different. What I bring to patients is something that no man can do, as I can't do what a man can do. It's all about balance. What can I bring? How can I serve others? So that's always been my goal, and something that keeps me going ahead. And right now I'm in the Swedenborg House of Studies to become a convention minister.
Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. I guess, well, I also started off in the Mars program. When I first started, the reason I got into the Mars program was because as working as a nurse, I realized I was much more interested and attracted to what the chaplains were doing with the patients than what I was doing as a nurse. So that was sort of my entree into ministry, was through the hospital setting. And in actually discussing that with the general church minister at the time, not sure whether that was appropriate for a woman to do, you know, I sort of got his impression that, you know, that might be what you're feeling called to now, and you don't know where that's going to lead you, and he encouraged me to just follow up, you know, one step at a time kind of thing. So that's what I did, became a chaplain, alongside still being a nurse. Then I got involved with the Caritas movement in the general church, which was people, men and women, who wanted to sort of take a fresh look at a lot of the way that the teachings had been interpreted, including the teachings about priesthood, and so therefore were, you know, maybe an organized group advocating for women's ordination. Through that process, I became much more confident in my ability to be a minister, and to see that how I was ministering to people in an interfaith way in the hospital was ministry, and that it was also legitimate for me to broaden to ordained ministry in the new church, which was not, of course, available to me in the general church. So that's the point at which I actually joined convention and was about to start their training in convention to become a convention minister. And I will say by that time I had gone through a lot of soul searching about my relationship with the general church, about the way that the general church was teaching, and the structures of the general church, and realized that I really did not feel comfortable with the sort of patriarchal way that that this organization works, even though I am still a member. So I joined convention, was not able financially to finish my training there, and that's why I'm now training with the Australian New Church, which is also more consistent for me because my grandfather was a minister in the Australian New Church. And I think you also asked how has it felt to sort of be going through this. There was a lot of pain for me initially in realizing that my calling was being dismissed by the church that I had loved so dearly, and by the community that had brought me up and that had previous to this been very supportive of me as a human being. A lot of pain in going through that, and an amazing feeling of acceptance, encouragement, nourishment, through working through first of all, the pastoral care department at Penn, where, as Julie said, in chaplain work, men and women work alongside each other from all different kinds of faith traditions, but never any question about legitimacy as a minister because of your gender. And then tremendous acceptance in both convention and in the Australian New Church. No question at all about gender, just about your qualifications, your pastoralness, you know, whether you are able to connect with people, whether you are able to understand the teachings and help other people to understand them. And so, for where there had been great pain, there is now just a great sense of community and acceptance and love and support. I've been able to lead a home church in Bronathan for 10 years now, of which some of the core members are present, and I thank you for being here. That's been wonderful for me personally in pastoral growth, but also to have the support of that right here in the community. I think that's all for now.
All right, I don't know if there are any more questions. If we had a short one, we could probably take one more. If anyone's got a question.
And I have a lot of points. Just first off, thank you folks so much. It was just a great survey and just really interesting. And I just would love to know real quickly, what are the next steps? Like, how exactly is the information going to get disseminated? And then how's it going to get plugged back into the whole AI process?
So we intend to share it as widely as we can. There will be, like this PowerPoint is going to be available to view as a document. You can print it yourself, you can do whatever you want with it. So as far as dissemination goes, we're sharing the information. As far as the AI process goes, this was our product. This was the project we took on, was creating a survey and then presenting the results. As far as the Advocates for Women's Ordination group goes, we are continuing. We're going to meet in January. If you want to come, let me know. There's a sign-up sheet for email lists at the back. You will get updates on what we're up to if you sign up there. We're excited to do more projects, and our January meeting will be talking about what are we going to do next. So,
has the general church shown any interest in finding out about this from you and pursuing the issue at all, or is this, or are they not being very open to this?
we have not come up against any major roadblocks. We didn't try to survey the general church. We decided to keep the scope to the Bronathan area and friends. And so far, I haven't received anybody calling me to say, what are the results? Did any of you? Okay. But they're aware of it. The bishop is aware of it. Obviously the pastoral staff here in Bronathan is aware of it. So we'll see what happens. We would love it if it generated enough buzz for the general church to decide they needed to do this survey. So.
A quick logistical question. I'm trying to understand I'm trying to understand the affiliation connected with the survey. So what were the emails that you had access to that you used?
The email we were eventually given access to is the email address list that the Bronathan pastor's office has. So like, it includes people that get the post via email. It's more than that as well, and we were able, through the high school, to have it disseminated to the entire high school student body through email. The college didn't give us access to the email, but we did a fairly good job of distributing it through the college via flyers.
So would you say this survey was affiliated with the Bronathan Church, but not with the general church?
Correct. And only affiliated, because we don't fall, quote unquote, we don't fall under the auspices of the AI project. So while it grew out of that process, part of that process was hoping to give them a strategic plan ideas, and they were like, yeah, we can't do anything with that project, but you go ahead and do it. So we've had permission to do it, as it were. It fortunately meant that we didn't get shut down at any point, like you can't ask these questions. But we still had to battle for a couple of things.
All right, well, thank you all very much for coming. I want to say thank you to all the people here who may have taken the survey. Thank you. People who gave us encouragement along the way. This has been a long process, and it's been great to have people encouraging us. Thank you also to the pastor's office for allowing this to happen and making a space for this discussion. to take place. Thank you to Larkin, who videotaped the presentation, so we can put it online. YouTube, anyone? And thank you to Keith and Rhett for being the sound people tonight, and thank you for everyone who came, and thank you. And again, moving forward, we would love to have more people get involved, and if you have any energy or passion around this, make sure you give us your email, and we would love your input and ideas on what we're going to do next. So, yes?
And how can people get a hold of us and give us their email?
There is a sheet at the door. Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, thank you.